Hello folks, this is just a little video I'm making for those of you who might miss a little bit of class or getting confused by some of the web development stuff. Let me just make sure this is recording properly. Okay, so I have opened Dreamweaver, and I just went to my apps here to do that. I'm going to go to File, New, here to open up a new file. And HTML is what you want. This document title will go up in the tab, not at the top of the page. So I might say something like, my first page. So HTML selected, we hit create. Okay, so the way this works, this is what we call the boilerplate. It's the basic stuff that any HTML page needs to work. This document type here, and doc type is document type. It tells the browser it's HTML, which is hypertext markup language. This is what all web stuff is written in. There's other languages like JavaScript and CSS, etc., but what those all boil down to at some point is HTML, and that's how they get interpreted by the browser. So hypertext just means text with additional stuff, like you can do links. It's a type of markup, kind of like XML if you heard of that. That's how all iTunes playlists are done and things like that. So hypertext markup language. It's a static language where we don't really program per se, where values change and stuff. It just allows us to mark out elements and what they are. So this tells me the HTML starts here. Anything after this is hypertext markup language, and that's basically everything that will be in this web page. And so that starts here, and you'll see a closing tag here. So that's the opening tag. This with the slash is where that closes. So everything between here and here is HTML. Everything between here and here is what we call the head area of the page. And this is where all the metadata browser stuff goes. This is basically for like search engines and things like that that need information. This isn't anything the user really sees, right? So this will be the tab at the top, and when I say tab, I mean like up here. This will be stuff for search engine optimization, keywording, things like that. So this is all bot stuff here for bots, basically, in Google and things like that. Now the body here is where the visible elements happen, and most of them have an opening and a closing tag. So here I will do an H1, which means heading 1, and notice it tries to autocomplete here. If I hit enter, it will accept that. And notice it made a closing tag for me. It knows every H1 opening tag needs a closing tag. So anything I type between these two will be the heading. Okay, same thing here. I could do H2, etc. Notice anything, and we can see a preview up here. If you don't see this, you can go to View, Split, and you want to do Code and Live. So we're seeing a live preview here. There's things like unordered lists. And once again, anything between the opening tag and the closing tag is going to be where all the list items, as we call them, go. Now we see these are coming up as a bolted list. If this were an OL instead, and remember I have to change both the opening tag and the closing tag. Now that it's numbered because it's an ordered list. So there's tons of tags like that. W3C or w3schools.org is a great place to go look for those. And let me just show you that here. I think my internet's having problems here. Okay, there we go. So right here, all this stuff, from the basics through all this, is really good to know. After you have mastered all the HTML elements, oh, one other thing I want to cover as far as elements, actually two. Some things don't have a closing tag. We call them empty elements. So line breaks don't have a closing tag because they automatically go all the way across the line. Also, images do not, because an image doesn't, we don't need to tell it where it starts and where it ends with opening and closing tags, it just is. So at that location I could put image, and we use something called a parameter, a source here, and that would be where the image lives. So I'm going to click on a picture of a cat, right click and do open image, a new tab, just so I can see just the image. And I'll right click and do copy image address. This is where it lives on the internet. So I'll go ahead and paste that in here. And then they highly encourage you to do an alt too, which is alternate text in case the image doesn't show up, but it's also what screen readers read. So I'll say picture of a cat. Now I'm putting this here because technically, and you can tell by the color, I'm just closing this part. This is just a very long opening, and there is no closing tag with a slash. You can see that image is shown up here. I can put in other parameters too, like width is equal to 500. Let's do 250. Boom. Now there's another component called CSS, and so CSS is all about styles. CSS can go in several places. It could go right in here, for instance, if we wanted to do style equals, and then in those quotation marks we could put something like border, colon, dotted. And then when you end that command, you put a semicolon there, and I'll put border color, border dash color. Another semicolon. So semicolons end these commands. So you have the name, colon, the value, and then a semicolon to end it. And then this is the second command, border color, the name, or which value are we addressing, and then colon, and then what is that value, red, and the semicolon. So notice now we have this red dotted line around this picture, and I put that right into the tag. Now let's say that we have a whole bunch of these list items here. So let's copy and paste this a couple times. Do we want to go into each one of these li tags here and put in style, border, colon, double. Now we would have to go through each one of these and add that in, which is super annoying. And if we decide to change this, we'd have to go through and do it for each of these. So there's another way to do CSS styles. What if I could get all of these list items at the same time? Well, if I go up here between the head, open, and close, anywhere between here that's not in another tag, and I'll do style. Between these two, I will put in elements I want to add a style to. So li from here, basically anything that's already an HTML element, like li, ol, image, any of that, you can just put right in here. It's already recognized. And then you put curly braces, and then you can put in a series of commands. So I might say something like border. Let's do inset border color black. Now I like putting these each on a different line. It makes them easier to read. Notice that putting these on their own line is not affecting anything here. So spaces or line breaks don't really affect what you see on the page too much unless you're actually coding a line break like we are here. Let's do border radius 5. Sometimes I have to put pixels too when I'm telling it how much something needs to be. Notice these are rounded now. Now, let's see. I'm going to put in what we call comment here, so that's not used temporarily. Okay, comments take things out of the running. I just wanted to see what that looked like without this command. Okay, so now we've got these rounded, they're doubled. Because H1 or list items are a certain type of item, they will always go all the way to the end of the page. And other items, like italics, only take up between the opening and closing tag. So these are called block level elements if they take up an entire line no matter what. You'll notice if I go here and I do an italic, oops, and that's just an I. Okay, this now has an italic word in. Notice it only takes up one little area, whereas these, no matter what, even with a small word, they go all the way to the end. That's just the type of items they are, block level or line level. So just be aware of that. There are ways with CSS to force these to change, like you could go to li display and we're changing from inline to block here. Now notice that they are lining up. They're only taking up as much as the text they have, and they're now lining up side by side. So that can get a little convoluted. Beyond that is Flexbox. So HTML and CSS, you can get pretty complicated with that stuff. Flexbox helps you line things up. And then slightly more complicated than that is Bootstrap. So Bootstrap just deals with putting basically things in rows or boxes. So for Bootstrap, let me see if I have one open right now. Here we've done something like we've said, hey, here's a class that's a container, and the container holds all of these. And then there's a row. Well, when you put multiple columns in the same row, if there's more than one column, it knows they need to line up next to each other. And there's a total of 12 columns. So when this column is worth 4 medium, 4 times 1, 2, 3 is 12, right? So these 3 columns are completely going to take up the space, and it knows there's going to be 3 columns here because 3 times 4 is 12, right? Or total is 12. Now, individually though, if this were on a small screen like a phone, the column will take up, each of these will take up all 12, so they will be on their own row, right? So we're going down here. Let's go down to the bottom. We'll make another div. And the class is going to be container. Notice I made a closing tag for us. Now in the container, I will put a row. So div class row. And inside the row, between the open and close here, I will start putting columns. Inside this column, I will put a paragraph. I'll do lorem 200 and hit tab. So that goes right there. Notice I put 200 pieces of text. Okay, so that's our first column. I'll go through here. Let's do another div class call. Let's put in a picture. Now notice, because it's between this div and this div, is technically inside that column. That's the image we're putting now. Okay, it says my image is broken, so let's check copy image address again. Oh, I left off that. There we go. So now that is in the column. Now notice this time I'm not telling you what column size. What it's going to do is automatically distribute the stuff between the current 2 that we have in this row. Now, you're noticing it's not going end to end. That's because up here we did container fluid. So let's see what happens down here if we do container fluid on this. Now they stretch all the way across the page, basically, right? And you can see that this one is just like the border. It's this big, it's just that the picture isn't that large. Now, if the image were fluid, let's see if we can make the image responsive here. Actually, what I need to do, this would be responsive if it got smaller, but the max width, it's already its normal max width, so I'd have to change that. So let's, for now, just add another column. We'll just copy this one here. Okay, I'll do a real-time preview in Google Chrome here. Sometimes it has problems doing these, so I don't know why. So we'll see what happens. There we go. So let's see if it's responsive. Now notice these, when they were smaller, 12, so you take up the whole row. That's why they're lining up vertically now. Look at these guys lining up now, and this. Okay, now you can keep putting the stuff inside, or as we call it, nesting stuff inside other stuff. Like in here, I could put a row inside a column, then put some columns inside of that, etc. Let me see if I have a recent copy to show you what that looks like. Here, this has a bunch of examples inside each other, like container fluid, row, GY5, column medium 4, column small 2, column large 12, etc. So you can see we end up with all these columns within columns, and you can do a lot of interesting stuff in here. So this, I went through and did a real-time preview in Google Chrome. Eventually it's all going to line out like this on the cell phone size. But up to that point, as it gets to like tablet size, these break up into different levels. All right, folks, I'll conclude that for now. Go ahead and experiment with it. Main things to keep in mind is that we have opening and closing tags on a lot of things. And also just make sure that you only have one HTML tag and one HTML close tag like we have at the bottom. Let me go to my simpler page. So one thing I see people do too, they keep copying body tags and stuff. Head open and head close only exist once in the entire page, and body open and body close only exist once in the entire page. So if you're copying examples and stuff, you don't want to keep posting in the body and stuff because they'll probably show you the whole page. Those only exist once. HTML open at the very start, right after doc type, and HTML close is the very last element you'll ever have in your page. And also body open just once and body close just once. All right, folks, thank you for your time.